Record to this. All right, we can get started whenever. I want to have a little sip of something here.
Yes. So first of all, Ross, thank you so much for your time and for wanting to come and share with us your insight regarding research, writing protocol. We look forward to learning from you. If you want to share something about yourself, your background, what motivated you to become a physician and now writing.
Yeah, Jen, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to talking about this and exploring everything kind of research related here. I'm an ICU doctor and clinical researcher in Canada at Western University in London, Canada. My background was I was an internist, and then I did my critical care training. Then I did training in ultrasound and a master's in kind of clinical epidemiology or health research methodology through McMaster University. And so I absolutely love talking about research methods, and I'm really excited to kind of share what I've learned. And you know what, when we were speaking before this webinar about, all right, what are we going to talk about here? One of the things I kind of suggested right from the get-go is, well, how can we write better protocols? And I think initially we were like, well, why should we care about that? But for me, this realization really dawned back when I was a medical student. And so for my first research study I ever did was I was a paramedic at the time, and I loved going to music festivals, and I loved hanging out at music festivals and
Oh,
listening to
nice.
different artists and stuff. So I thought, how can I get to a music festival as a medical student and do research? And so my idea was, well, what about if we brought ultrasound or point of care ultrasound to a music festival, and we could then kind of see what its impact was? And so we brought a bunch of ultrasound machines, we had a bunch of doctors, everyone was really keen, we collected a bunch of data. At the end of it, we kind of didn't really answer any specific question. We kind of described what we did, but the impact of the research was really, really small. And the problem was the methodology had a few limitations, to say the least. And it wasn't really until residency that I connected with a mentor of mine, Dr. McInnes, who's a fantastic researcher, epidemiologist, radiologist. And one of the things that he emphasized really just from the get-go was spend 90% more time than you think on the protocol, and then the rest of the research becomes a lot easier. Because having a really, really airtight protocol makes sure that one, the question that you're answering is interesting and answerable and is something worthwhile doing. And it also gives the opportunity for everyone to give input on how to make the study design even better. And then once the protocol is really solid, the research just kind of conducts itself. You just follow the protocol. There's a blueprint telling you exactly what to do. And then you can share that with data, research assistants, data scientists, or anyone else collaborating. And so that was really just kind of a pivotal moment in my career, early kind of academic career. And now, as somebody who's doing research every day, all day, doing as much research as I can because I love it, just having that upfront investment in time is so impactful down the road. And so hopefully what we can share with you through this webinar and through the webinar series here is how can you create a amazing protocol from the get-go that will just make your research life so much easier than the struggles that I've been through in the past for years and years and years.
Yeah, that's a great experience, and I like how you shared that you just went all in into getting things done and then figuring out because sometimes that's what it takes, willingness to go out there, figure things out, and start doing it. And then you learn like I need systems because I cannot just do it like this. Let me see what worked and what didn't, and let's figure out how we can make it better. And it's the beauty of writing a protocol because when you sit down and write, you kind of come and figure different layers and work with it.
Absolutely. Yep. I find that for me, the generating the actual protocol, I as I'm writing it and I already have an idea of what I want, I'm like, oh gosh, I hadn't even thought about this. Oh, what happens if this happens? How are we going to deal with this? And so you're almost troubleshooting along as you're writing the protocol, which is a fantastic part of it as well.
So when we are trying to focus in on writing a protocol, for those that never write a protocol, where should they start?
And you know what? This is a pretty tough question, right? Because it sounds simple. You just write a protocol, but we're talking about doing incredibly complex science, and we're doing impactful research, and we're trying to do research that's really going to move the needle, and that's not easy. And so, in my opinion, the first place to start is probably to take a step back and maybe ask yourself why. you're doing research. And there's a lot of really, really good reasons to do research. There's bad reasons, but there's also really, really good reasons. And so reasons to do research are to seek out mentorship because you want to connect with somebody, and this is a great way to kind of work with somebody and learn from them. You want to develop your own research skills and understanding of a field. There's no better way to become an expert in something than to start researching it, because to create that protocol and to understand that field, you have to start reading at a level that you would never read before, just kind of casually on a topic. It's incredible for kind of developing your academic career, whatever that may be, in kind of residency, as a physician, as a researcher. So absolutely very important from that perspective. So I think it's important though that you're being honest with yourself about why you're doing research in the first place to make sure you've at least identified it so that you can maximize either the learning or the relationships or the experience that you're getting out of it. I would say the next thing is probably, if it's your first time writing a protocol, is to partner somebody who has experience and look for mentorship in that regard, because it is extremely difficult. And it took me years to actually master writing a protocol. And I wouldn't say I'm a master by any stretch of the imagination now, but to get to the point where I could do it independently and could start mentoring other people in this. And so I would really seek out mentorship from somebody who can help you with that. The next thing I would say is don't start from scratch. There's a lot of incredible research templates and protocols out there, and we have some that we'll share kind of throughout the webinar series so that everyone can access them. But they provide essentially an outline that you can fill in while you're doing your protocol generation so that you don't miss things. And there's probably going to be a lot of things in there that you might have never heard of before, and you're like, oh gosh, I didn't even realize I had to consider this. But then the reading and the learning around that is kind of the next step. And then I think just really refining the research question as you go through it. The biggest problem with research questions when people first generate them are, one, they generate questions that are not answerable. So I'm like, all right, I want to prove that I'm an ultrasound researcher, so I want to prove that ultrasound is going to save lives in cardiac arrest or something like that. That's very, very big. And it's a great question. And oh my gosh, if we could answer this, that would be incredibly impactful. But it's not feasible based on study recruitment, the logistics of it. And so I think starting with a very, very small and answerable question to start with, and then as you answer that and understand the field a bit more, you'll be able to start tackling bigger and bigger and bigger research problems. And it's just that comes from a recognition that there's no research question that gets answered with a single study. Every research question that truly is going to be answered needs to have multiple iterative studies that grow and build on previous experiences, because until you start researching a topic, you don't really understand the unknown unknowns and what you still need to learn on that topic.
That sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. But it's a lot of work, but I think there's a lot of learning along the way as well,
Mhm.
right? And so even the secondary benefits to learning how to write a good research question, because what that allows you to do is when you're reading research, you can critically appraise it better because you understand what makes a good answerable question and what makes a bad or less good question, I should say. It also helps with your communication skills and getting your ideas down in a really structured and clear way. It helps you kind of master learning around a topic, because as you're writing your introduction for the protocol, as you're writing the methods, you're,
Mhm.
at least for me, I'm reading papers all day trying to figure out all the stuff I don't know in the background. And so it really does force you to dive really, really deep on a topic and become an expert. And then that expertise in the topic has so much benefit for your own career and for your patients if you're a clinician. So it's really just a really cool kind of flywheel that all feeds into something, and it works really, really well.
Yes. So from what I'm hearing is that framing the question is essential even more before starting the protocol. We want to go very, very detailed on that question, like a SMART goal, like be have a mentor that can help you review your questions. So you don't go there, spend a lot of time writing a protocol for a question that might not make sense or might not
Yeah.
make very good questions. And it's that's something that we are going to learn to do inside the webinar, right?
Absolutely. And not only that, there will definitely be an opportunity to get feedback
Mhm.
on your research question as part of the webinar series to really kind of understand, all right, like what about this question is not optimal? And yeah, there's frameworks like Pico and all Pirates for all these different types of research questions, and we'll talk about those. But those are just the starting point. There's a lot more nuance. And I'd say that the biggest issue I see when people are creating questions for the first time is they're just too big. Everything's too broad, and they're not actually answerable. And it's really, really hard to create an answerable research question that a single study can answer. And typically, it's way, way, way more focused than what people think initially.
That's I'm looking forward to it because I'm looking to learn a lot from you during this webinar. My experience with research so far in the protocols is has been learning the protocols so I can conduct it during a clinical trial. So I get to review the protocol, learn the logistics, and see what needs to be done. And basically, it's like the protocol is like the recipe for the clinical trials. We need just to follow it and be ensure that everything is in the protocol. But I also have noticed that some protocols, they they don't make sense or they're written in a form that we cannot follow it. And it's so difficult from the side of a research side and the
Mhm.
coordinators to kind of understand what's going on and follow the protocols. Have you encountered those challenges during some of the protocols?
Yeah, I think that really comes down to the issue of feasibility. And so when I think about the doing a big study, like a big trial, the first thing you want to do is make sure that the trial is interesting, and the second thing is you want to make sure, and probably more importantly, maybe even the first thing is it feasible? And there's so many different things that go into the feasibility of performing a large study. So the first is like, can you identify and screen for patients that might be eligible for that trial? If so, are the study procedures that you're going to be performing, are they tolerable to both the patients and the providers? Do you have an adequate recruitment rate, for example, to make the study not be over in 8 years, but in the year or two that you have funding for? Do you have adequate support from a research methods perspective? And so I think that that's the thing we have to layer on into all of our protocols is what is the feasibility based on where we're actually doing the study. And so I'm a huge advocate for starting a research arc, I'd call it, and an arc just being multiple studies going in one kind of direction to try to answer a question. I'm a big fan with starting with a pilot or a feasibility study where we're not looking for outcomes. Instead, we're looking at process metrics like recruitment rate, consent rate, how many patients that you can actually screen eligible in a month. And from doing some feasibility work myself with some of our local research in sepsis and ultrasound, we found that, oh gosh, like things might not have been as feasible as we thought for one study because our recruitment rate was much lower and we had a hard time identifying patients that would actually be eligible for the study. And so then we actually changed our inclusion criteria for a bigger study such that we could recruit more patients in to the study and we had a better way to do it. And so sometimes when people jump too far to the definitive trial and neglect the earlier kind of groundwork, we get into a situation where we're trying to answer an unanswerable question because we just can never identify enough patients, for example.
Okay. Yes. So I think this is like it might be a lot for a doctor or for someone starting to understand
Hmm.
this terminology. But once we get in and we start learning the terminology, all of this comes clearer. So if there's a resident listening or a doctor looking to write their own protocols or learning the basics of a protocol so they can run their clinical trials, during the webinar, they're going to learn how to do this. But why is this important for them? What would this mean to their career?
Yeah, great question. I think the first thing is it allows for great mentorship opportunities. If you can write a really good protocol, it means that you can go to somebody that you want to maybe do research with, or you want to work with, or collaborate with in the future. And instead of going to them and saying, "Hey, I want to do research with you," kind of like tugging at their coattails, being like, "Hey, like let me in." You can go to them and bring something of value and be like, "Hey, I saw you're doing research in this area. I've spent a bit of time thinking about this area myself because I think I would love to collaborate with you on this. I've actually taken the first step and written a protocol. It's not going to be perfect because I'm not the expert in the field. You're the expert in the field here." But this is like kind of what I'm thinking here. And already you've now established yourself as somebody who understands the importance of doing a protocol, who's independent and can take those first steps. And I think just from a mentorship perspective, it makes it a lot easier because when I have people approach me to collaborate on studies and they say, "Hey, can I join you on stuff?" I'm like, "All right, what do you want to join me on?" And they're like, And like, okay, well, so you want me to kind of like bring you along as part of it, which I try to do as much as possible. But the other way, when people come up to me and say, "Hey, I saw that you're working on this. I have an idea for this. I've actually here's something I've put together that would explore that." I'm like, okay, like this person, they're really kind of dialed in, and so definitely even just from kind of getting that mentorship and those connections, it can be really helpful. And then also just from a communication perspective, your protocol becomes your manuscript when you write it. The introduction, the methods, those are set in stone. The shell data tables that will create for it from the for the CRFs, for example, the case report forms, those are just your results tables in some ways. And so your manuscript's essentially written before you've started the study. And you already kind of have a hypothesis going into the protocol about what you think it's going to show. So if your hypothesis holds true, you already know what the discussion's going to be. Now, if the hypothesis isn't true, then you'll have to tweak the discussion, but essentially you'll have your entire manuscript ready to go before you've even started doing the research, which is, I mean, it just saves you time. It's great.
Yes, and I like the way that you're saying this because I like to teach that our attitude and how we approach other people, sharing value first, makes the difference um, in our
Absolutely.
career, in how we show up for ourselves, right? Because when we know what we're talking about, we show up with confidence and we feel good about what we are doing, and we are able to maybe answer some of the researcher or the mentor questions that they might ask us.
A saying that I love related to that is don't sell yourself, make yourself something or someone that people want to buy. And it really goes into that. Like you're not trying to sell yourself when you're talking to somebody. You're saying, "Hey, like look at all the cool stuff I'm doing here. I know how to do this. Do you want to be part of kind of what I'm working on as opposed to the other way around to some extent?" And I see that as a hallmark of success for many trainees, doctors, researchers that I work with, that they're just doing cool stuff and they're doing it themselves and they're pushing it along, and then people want to join them as opposed to them trying to find opportunities from other people. So this is just another way to kind of make yourself somebody that people want to buy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I have seen that this is just one of the stepping stones for a person to grow their skills into medical writing, or they can continue further their career. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. So medical writing and protocol writing are directly kind of transferable skills. And I think that there's many opportunities for medical writing because being an expert kind of copy editor, being a really good and a clear communicator in the medical sphere has a lot of kind of job opportunities. Medical writing for either biopharma companies, biotech, device companies. It's a huge industry. And so the skills that you learn writing in the active voice, writing clearly, avoiding challenging sentence structures, creating parallel sentence structures between different paragraphs, all those things have direct transferability to being an excellent communicator in general, of which medical writing is one of the applications, as is academia, as is doing research as a, or even communicating to patients as a doctor, for example. So all of those I think are super valuable.
Okay, I agree, and I'm looking forward to learning more inside the webinar series. Do you have some words of encouragement that you want to give the audience or invite them on why would this be a good webinar for them?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, doing research is really hard. There's no two ways about it. This isn't like a 4 tips for you to become an expert researcher in 2 hours. There is no shortcut, right? The only way that you can invest in yourself is by doing hard things and pushing yourself. And one of the things when we were talking about what we want to actually add to this webinar series was we want people to work alongside us through this month. Like I'll be working on my projects. Hopefully you can be working on projects as well as a participant to the webinar series and writing protocols and iterating and stumbling and fumbling because that's what getting better at something is. And so research is hard. This webinar series will be hard. I think we'll ask you to do work, but in doing so, you'll actually learn something because you can't just watch a YouTube video for 30 minutes to become a better writer. That's just not how it works. You have to put in the time, reflect, and struggle. And hopefully, though, that the difference between struggling and thrashing is hopefully the struggling is directed towards a goal and with some guidance and mentorship, and it's not floundering around and just doing hard work that isn't leading everywhere. So hopefully to direct that hard effort towards something that is becoming a better writer, writing a really, really high quality protocol and setting yourself up well in the future, and understanding how to use new tools available like ChatGPT and other kind of writing tools, for example, to improve your writing such that you're not you're not just kind of doing it the same way we did it 50 years ago, but we're using the everything in our toolkit to become efficient, impactful, and to struggle in the right direction.
Yes. I like that. And I also like the way that we are structuring the webinar to be on weekly basis so that
Hmm.
can give time for the audience to sit down and work on their project and
Yeah,
have the time to work their mind, brainstorm, come with ideas, make it better, and communicate with maybe other part of the audience so they can also work together. That
yeah,
will be a great experience for them. So
yeah.
in this webinar series, we were looking to start. We will start with the right question. We will break down the right question. We will be using, proven structures on how to write the protocol. We're going to make visuals. We're going to be using AI or discussing how AI can be used to accelerate our writing process, but not to replace it, not to
Yeah.
be like what we have seen that people are putting ChatGPT in publishing things and it even give you some things like correct this or do this, like the ChatGPT inside, they put it right there. So let's do a good work. Let's do our best. And that's what we are trying to do here. And at the end, we discuss that we are going to review some of the protocols of
Hmm.
the audience and give feedback so everyone know, a little bit more insight of what goes in the protocols and what it looks to be completed. And maybe that help everybody wanting to turn in the papers for review.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think ultimately it's up to the audience what they want out of this series, right? We're here as guides to help direct the
Mhm.
struggling in the right direction and hopefully help see around some of the corners that I've learned by just bashing into the walls repetitively. Maybe we can avoid a couple of those walls for the audience and accelerate people's research career or process and hopefully find a bit more joy in doing research. Because to be entirely honest, when if research is just a constant struggle every day, it can become like joyless and it can really kind of turn people off. And I think you have to get to it's like riding a bike. If you keep falling off your bike, you're not going to find cycling very fun. But the reason why we persist is eventually we can cycle and ride our bike and we don't fall off, and then it is actually pretty fun. And so I feel like research is like that, except it takes like 3 years to not fall off your bike. And so the first like 3 years of falling off your bike repetitively until you're competent can be quite discouraging. And so hopefully we can reduce that time a little bit and give a bit of motivation so that everyone has the persistence to keep going through because research does become really fun and impactful and meaningful, both from a professional sense in terms of your career, but also from a personal sense. Being able to contribute new knowledge into the world is something that not many people in the world have an opportunity to really do. And so, I hope that we can support the audience members listening to this and throughout the webinar series and after the webinar series in exploring their own career and really meaningfully contributing to science because it's pretty cool to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think this is one of the first steps for the audience to find their voice and to
Mhm.
start reclaiming their worth so they can be unstoppable. They can do whatever they want to do and they don't need to stop here. This is just one of those stepping stones. And not to quit because, as you say, it takes time and understanding that. Be kind to yourself, and then pushing through that 10% because many quick quit when they're close, like to 90%. And when they're so close, they just give up.
Mhm.
So let's do this. Let's work together to push through all of it and have it written. I think this is going to be a great experience for many of us.
I hope so. I really do. I think it will. Actually, I know it will. I know it will. It'll be a great experience for me. We get to hang out, we get to chat, we get to chat with researchers and trainees and stuff. It sounds like fun regardless, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Okay, so that sounds great. We're going to wrap up. And then for everyone listening, we're going to send the information so how they can register, sign in, and follow up with us. If they want to follow up with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, I'm on X or LinkedIn. Ross, my X handle, Twitter X is Ross underscore Prager, Prager. I'm really active on Twitter. I talk about academic writing, research, a lot of critical care and sepsis and stuff. I'm always, feel free to DM me, shoot me a message. I'm always happy to chat. Just Ross underscore Prager, but looking forward to connecting with everyone live.
Okay, so perfect. Let's do it.
All right, see you guys.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.